Let's talk about the personal dynamics within the Beatles and specifically how George Harrison was stifled for so many years.
Yes, he became an incredible songwriting talent. The question is, did he develop that skill in response to being shut out of the creative process within the band?
It's just such a pressure cooker situation. We look at the legacy, the albums, and we see four giants standing side by side.
Right, equals.
But if you peel back the layers, the day-to-day reality was, well, it was a lot messier. It was much more hierarchical than people think. And it really all starts with what you could call the kid brother reality.
You really can't understand the end without going right back to the beginning. We're talking 1958.
A long time ago.
When George joined the Quarrymen, he was only 15 years old. I mean, just think about that, 15.
And he wasn't just joining a band of his peers. He was walking directly into John Lennon's world.
A world where John was older, louder, and, this is critical, an art student.
That distinction mattered a lot back then.
Oh, it was massive, not just in the class system, but just in, teenage cool.
Yeah.
John was the swaggering college guy. George was the grammar school kid who, well, he looked up to John with total hero worship.
And John knew it. He saw George not just as a guitarist, but as a subordinate. I think John even admitted years later that he saw George as a disciple. He called him a young follower.
That sets a tone, doesn't it? And that tone just... It never really went away. It hardened into concrete. John and Paul formed this incredibly tight creative unit.
The brain trust.
Exactly. They were the leaders, the writers. George was the lead guitarist. A brilliant one, but he just wasn't seen as a creative peer.
It's like being the junior partner. You do good work, you show up, but your name isn't on the door. For a long time, the story was that this just sort of happened naturally.
That John and Paul were just too prolific.
Right. But it wasn't an accident, was it?
No, and this is where the myth gets a little bit uncomfortable. It wasn't just that they were writing more, it's that they were actively gatekeeping the process. There was an agreement to limit his contributions.
And Paul McCartney finally came clean on this, didn't he?
He did. In a 2021 interview, he was surprisingly candid about it. He admitted he and John basically shut George out. They decided who got studio time, what made the final cut.
So George was treated like an instrumentalist who should just stay in his lane.
Stay in your lane, kid. And that creates this impossible situation for George. It's a classic catch-22.
The experience gap.
That's the real tragedy. Songwriting is a muscle. You have to use it. You have to be allowed to write bad songs before you can write good ones.
And just think about the head start John and Paul had. By the time they record their first album, they've already written, dozens? Maybe hundreds of songs together?
Writing was like breathing to them. Now, contrast that with George. He's learning in public.
In his early 20s.
Trying to figure out how to write a bridge while standing next to two of the biggest geniuses and biggest egos the world has ever seen.
That intimidation factor alone must have been just paralyzing.
It absolutely crushed his confidence. George wasn't coming in demanding equal time. He was almost apologetic. He'd bring in a song and basically say, sorry, this probably isn't very good.
He wasn't fighting for dominance. He was just fighting for permission to even exist creatively.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the first real evidence of that struggle. His first official song, Don't Bother Me, from 1963.
The context for that song is so perfect. He wasn't struck by some great muse.
No, he was in a hotel room in Bournemouth, of all places.
Yeah.
Sick in bed.
Literally just killing time. He picked up a guitar to see if he could write a song. It was an exercise. Can I do what they do?
And when you listen to it, you can kind of hear that, can't you? It's fine.
It is. It's competent. But it's also a little rigid. It doesn't have those surprising melodic twists that Paul was already a master of. It sounds exactly like a first attempt.
But because he's a Beatle, that first attempt goes out to millions of people. The pressure is just immense.
And it just reinforced his own insecurity. But that pressure, that isolation, it eventually created something incredible.
Okay, so the timeline shifts. We're past Beatlemania. We get to 1967, the Summer of Love.
Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
This is usually seen as the peak of Lennon McCartney, but for George, it's a huge turning point.
This is where he stops trying to be a third Lennon or a third McCartney. He realizes he can't win their game, so he invents his own.
Within You, Without You.
It just stands out like a beacon on that album. It is not a pop song. It's a philosophical meditation.
Totally. All that time he spent immersing himself in Indian culture, studying the sitar with Ravi Shankar, it all comes out in this track.
The instrumentation is entirely non-Western. It fits the psychedelic vibe, but it sounds like nothing else. It was, for the first time, purely George.
And here's the thing. The teacher finally noticed. John Lennon, after all those years of dismissing him, he sat up and paid attention.
He did. It took him a while to say it publicly, John being John, but in 1980 he called it one of George's best songs. He praised the clarity of his mind and his music.
That really feels like the moment the Kid Brother label just stopped fitting. You can't call someone a follower when they're leading you into a whole new musical world.
It was undeniable. George had arrived. But what's so ironic is that John actually played a pivotal role in unlocking George's potential as a more conventional songwriter, too.
Right. This is one of the great contradictions. They're competitors, but John gives him this one piece of advice that changes everything.
It was so simple, so practical. John told him, once you start to write a song, try to finish it straight away while you're still in the same mood.
And for a guy like George, who was probably agonizing over every little detail, afraid of the criticism, that's huge. It's permission to trust your gut.
Exactly. And we know that specific piece of advice helped him write something.
Something. I mean, a song Frank Sinatra called the greatest love song of the past 50 years.
And Sinatra famously credited it to Lennon and McCartney for years, which just goes to show you how much George had closed that gap. He was now operating at their level.
Even John Lennon himself called it the best song on Abbey Road.
So in this really strange, twisted way, John helped create the very songwriter who would challenge their monopoly.
And from 1968 on, the floodgates didn't just open, they were blown off their hinges.
He wasn't just contributing one-off tracks anymore. He was delivering absolute classics. While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
Here Comes the Sun. Something. I mean, these songs define the late Beatles era.
They absolutely do. You'd think, just logically, the other two would say, okay, George is a heavyweight now, we need to make room.
You would think.
Yeah.
But that brings us to the tragedy of the Let It Be sessions.
The atmosphere by 1969 was just toxic. We've all seen the footage. George actually quits the band for a few days.
He had enough. He felt like a session musician in his own band.
And he had this stockpile of incredible songs, but when they're trying to save the band, John Lennon proposes something radical.
This is the big what-if moment, isn't it? John suggests a new formula for the albums, a 4-4-4-2 split.
4 songs for John, 4 songs for Paul, 4 songs for George, and 2 for Ringo.
That's equality. That's John Lennon, the guy who called him a disciple, finally saying, okay, you're one of us now, the hierarchy's gone.
It was the validation George had been chasing his whole life. It would have changed everything. Imagine a Beatles album where a third of it is peak George Harrison.
So why didn't it happen? Why didn't that save them?
Paul McCartney said no.
Paul said no.
He rejected it. He apparently said something like, I didn't think George's songs were that good until this year, and he wouldn't agree to it.
And that was the nail in the coffin.
It really was. You have John, the daddy figure, finally opening the door, and the other partner slams it shut. Paul just couldn't see him as anything but the kid brother.
And so, the band breaks up in 1970. But this is where the real revenge comes in. The ultimate, I told you so.
The unleashing.
Yes. Most solo artists put out a single album. George Harrison releases All Things Must Pass, a triple album.
It was a statement. A decade of suppressed creativity. All the songs they rejected or ignored, they all came pouring out at once. It wasn't, here's my album. It was, here is what you miss.
And the reaction was just unbelievable.
Oh, it was a juggernaut. Critically acclaimed, commercially a monster. It outsold John's Plastic Ono Band. It outsold Paul's McCartney album. The junior partner had the biggest record in the world.
It's the ultimate vindication. He proved that maybe the Beatles were holding him back, not the other way around.
But what I love about George, and it really speaks to his whole spiritual journey, is that even after all of that, he still had this incredible perspective on John.
You're talking about that interview from 1981 after John was killed.
Yes, he was reflecting, and he didn't hold a grudge. He didn't paint him as a saint either.
He called him a good lad. He said there was a part of John that was saintly, and then added that another part of him was just a loony.
Part saint, part loony. It's probably the most honest description of John Lennon ever. It just shows George's character. He was spiritual, funny, and generous enough to forgive the daddy who left home.
He didn't let the bitterness consume him. And I think that struggle, the fight to be heard, is what gave his music that special quality. All Things Must Pass isn't an angry album. It's transcendent.
Being shut out forced him to look inward. It forced him to find a voice that wasn't just a copy of the others. Being the underdog made him hungry.
So by the time he finally got his shot, he was more than ready.
He was over-prepared. The tragedy is that by the time John was ready to offer him that equal partnership, the relationships were too broken. The teacher recognized the student, but the school had already burned down.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Whenever you feel like knowing more about the Beatles, visit us at BeatlesRewind.com. It's the Beatles, all day, every day, 8 days a week. Cass, we'll do it again tomorrow. I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Until next time, when you listen.
Your mind conducts its own symphony.